Welcome to Empowered, Mind-Body Inspiration. The mind is the map to wholeness, wellness, health. The heart is the key to genius and inspiration. Join me and my guests as we explore how to release and rewire into who you truly are, unique, whole, and empowered. Please like, share, and subscribe. Spiral up, spiral out. Welcome, everyone. Today we have Reverend Dr. Sharon Elizabeth James. Sharon has been on a conscious spiritual path from the very beginning of her life. When she was 2.5 years old, she experienced cosmic consciousness. She has always been aware of the invisible realms that are part of and are integrated with our life here on Earth. She has so much to share from an authentic place few can see or are connected to, but perhaps is available to all of those with eyes and a heart to see. I am so excited to see how this spirals out. Welcome, Sharon Elizabeth. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's get right into your experience when you were 2.5 and how that has shaped your life.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, I guess I could start off by saying that my earliest memory was when I was 1.5 years old. I remember specifically where I was in a crib, and it was, I guess, my parents were having a party, and I do recall people opening up the door and coming in and checking on me. I also remember having a doll. It was like made of, it was stuffed, and it was a cloth doll that was stuffed, but it had a pointed head, like I guess what you call those cone heads, that Saturday Night Live used to do. So it was the same size as myself. So probably that was like a token as to what was going to unfold in my life later on, looking at this strange looking being looking back at me. But when I was 2.5 years old, I was in my parents, I was a toddler. I was just standing by a white wall. And then all of a sudden, I had, in terms of my consciousness, this experience where I was one with everything. It's like I knew everything. I knew that this was not my first time being on the earth. I was one with all creation. It was cosmic consciousness. It was just, beyond what my little 2.5-year-old body and brain, could comprehend. It was just an experience of being one with everything. And there's no words to describe what that was like. But after that experience, it was just always there within me. And I would say that this experience was something that kept me on course throughout my life. Now, I ended up going to Catholic school. And part of that, of course, they have the catechism and indoctrination, but there's a lot of indoctrination that this is how it is and this is how it should be. Some of it, of course, resonated with me and other things did not. I believe that I was always going back to this experience. And so I challenged a lot of things, that were saying this is the way it is. And I was like, I wasn't too sure about that. But early on, very, very early, I guess I could say I was in my body when I was about maybe just coming into my body when I was in kindergarten. I was always like not felt I was totally in my body. And then in the first grade, one significant experience was that there was a nun, and she was really beautiful. She really came from the higher heart of compassion and love. In fact, she became a cloister. But that was my very first experience of where I could see, love and caring and all of that, which was beautiful. In the second grade, it was the complete opposite. So it was, an experience where, I was dealing with somebody, everybody has their own issues and so forth. And the experience with this particular nun was, not as loving and caring at all like the first one. So right away, I could see there were two dynamics in this world right away. And then again, that experience, as I said, was such a part of me, even when I was, very young and a child, growing up. And then it became, at one point, I really got the chance to see what the world was like. And so maybe, I'm 7 years old, 8 years old, where you really begin to like, whoa, this is the world. And I was mortified. I was absolutely mortified. I don't know if I was 6 or 7, somewhere in that area. But I was really upset with God because I said, what am I doing here? I'm not supposed to be here. No, there's a big mistake. And I remember as a kid looking up at the stars, and I actually felt abandoned. I felt like, I was dropped off on this planet, and, my family, just left me here in this place that was, to me, horrible, barbaric. And I even remember while being in school, we would have like a science report, and I um, remember doing this cover where it was beautiful color pictures of the planets that I put on there. And in my writing, where people would say the world, I was always saying this planet, with kind of an attitude also, this planet. At some point, I came into the understanding that, I'm here, make the best of it. And that's what I did. But most certainly, that experience of cosmic consciousness when I was 2.5 years old was a defining point in my life that has always, even through obstacles and challenges and distractions of the world, did keep me on course. It also had me challenged the status quo if I did not feel it was ringing with some level of truth that I could resonate with. So I guess you could say that it kind of put me on the path of the renegade, always questioning things. But however, what's interesting with that, um, when I was in the 8th grade, and that was, in the Catholic school, elementary school, it actually went up to the 8th grade. And when we were graduating, I ended up being the salutatorian because we had separate, boys on one side, girls on the other side. So we were schooled in separate buildings. But so you had, the two people that would be giving those speeches at this graduation. And this particular nun, this teacher, which I'm always grateful for her, I guess saw something in me that I didn't see. And the person that everybody would expect to be giving this salutatorian speech was not asked. She asked me. And I would say that that was a defining point also growing up that really empowered me, to take a leadership position and to move forward with that. Um, what's interesting to note is that after, I did do that and went into high school, that is when I really was beginning to see that um, there were dynamics going on in the sense that, well, this is how the world should be, but then in drastic contrast, what the world was really like. And I could see it plain as day. And so from young, I'm saying, I think I got to do something about this. This is not right. This is what's with all the suffering. What's with that? Here we have that this is what it should not be. You should come from love and all of that. But then you look at the world, and then you could also see that all that glitters is not gold. And I was able to pierce through seeing that. So that did not give me the easiest life because I'm kind of going against the grain. People don't really understand me. I learned to keep my mouth shut. I absolutely did. But as time went on, I became stronger through life's challenges, okay, to really at this point bring me into a place of being my authentic self, and I must tell my truth and do what I feel that I've come here to do. So that has brought me to today and to this wonderful session that I'm having with you, Jane, which is all about making a positive difference in our world and to move it forward into the ascension.
Right? So beautiful. This experience you had at 2.5 when you felt this oneness that you remembered and carried forward. That's such it's hard to describe in words. Can you describe it a little bit more, what it felt like to be
Oh,
one?
wow. Well, it really is difficult when something is transcendent at that. But, it was this feeling of omnipotent, omniscient, omni everything. I felt it was the most beautiful experience. So that I remember, it was like hard to describe. It was a beautiful experience. So, what I can kind of calculate in my mind, I had to be experiencing this unconditional love. I had to be experiencing that, this unconditional love. And the expansiveness, I felt just expansive, like eternal. It was like never ending. I just knew on everything. I understood everything. I was everything, and it was the most beautiful, beautiful experience. And that I've been trying to get back to that experience ever since. So that has put me on this path, because the path is I know that, and I want that. I want to re-experience that again. And so that is really the driving force, this unconditional love,
Mm.
this sense of oneness and wholeness. Um, it's beyond human language really to describe. And it has been absolutely has taken me on the path where I have been and where we both here find ourselves today.
Yeah, to draw back on that, I had one experience after I had meditated. I went for a walk, and it was just like a flash, but suddenly I was part of the plants and the trees, and I can remember it clear as day, but it didn't last long.
Right, right. And when I was 2.5, who knows how long that lasted? It could have been like 5 seconds or like, 20. I know it couldn't have been too long. I was just standing by a wall. I just remember it was a white wall and not sure, and then when you get into those higher levels of transcendence, there is no time. So, it could have been a second or it could have been 10 minutes, we don't know. But it's like it felt like it lasted an eternity.
Hmm. And then since then, have you practiced, like, because you do talk with, you know, or what would you call it when you have a communication with enlightened star beings and ascended masters and
Yes, yes,
all this
yes.
really
So,
good information? Yeah.
right. So I would say that, you know, in 19 actually it was in 1979. And in my childhood, and I think that part of my lineage and having maybe, a tendency towards psychic experiences may have run in my family, probably in both sides, but most certainly on my father's side. And what I didn't know until I was a little older was that my grandmother, my father's mother, Louise, who I only met once when I was 7 years old, very briefly, and then she passed. But she was a medium. I didn't know that until way later. And then I have my aunt, who was my father's sister too, had the same tendency, that this sort of, if you want to call it trans, being beyond, the world, this transcendent connection. And I remember just her being known as a spiritual advisor. But this is the thing, my family, especially my mother, was like, oh, no, no, no. My mother would always say, I would have like these dream experiences when I was young, and I would talk about it. One in particular was I had a sore throat, and when it goes up the airs, the eustachian tube, and so I really wasn't feeling well in my bed. And I remember, this just beautiful, kind, like nurturing presence around me. It's going to be okay, like very loving, like maybe kind of touching my face and giving me some comfort. And I guess maybe this might have been the first time I understood that there were things going on that, the general public maybe were not aware of it, and somehow I was. And I told my mother, I said, Mom, you came into my room and you were, you know, uh, comforting me. And she said, no, she did not do that. And I said, well, there was somebody there doing that. And she said, oh, it's just a dream. So her default was always, it's just a dream.
Mm.
And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I've had experiences of a dream, but then I've also had experiences that was more than a dream. So as I said, I'm like, well, my mom is not the one to talk to about these things, because she was like, no, no, and no. And then I guess she kind of knew about my aunt and my grand. She was like, she just did not even see that happening in a gazillion years for me. So it was shut down. Now, the only thing my father, okay, who was who I realized how powerful he was as being a gentle, loving soul. That's who he was. He got out there, provided for his family, but he had this other part of him that I didn't recognize as much until later on. But he used to told me something, and it stuck with me all my life. And what he said was, his mother, which is my grandmother, the one that was the medium, told him that we travel in our sleep. And that just struck a chord with me. I have never forgotten that we travel in our sleep. And maybe on some level of myself, I knew that to be true, but it was just a statement. To this day. It resonated with me. It absolutely resonated with me. So anyway, I guess when I was about 16 years old, too, I remember being in bed, and this happens to a lot of people. And I always felt there was somebody like next to me, which scared me. I was like, who's in the bed, okay, next to me? And so I would put the covers over my head and just, pray. And of course, I was always praying. I was always praying to Jesus and, just for protection and all of that. And, I kind of got through that. And then things started to progress a little bit more. Now, this is important to state. So since I was very, very young, some of these dreams or experiences I would have were like attacks. I guess that would be the word. I would be afraid. And so just giving an example is that I had one experience when I was younger, like in my 20s, that as I'm opening up and, becoming aware and, moving always on the path of wanting to know. I was always always a seeker of truth. I went to Unity. I looked at, went ahead and went into other religions and philosophies and things like that, always seeking, seeking, seeking. I would have these dreams where I remember one time, I can't remember the full, it was more of experience, but it was like darkness trying to get to me, or darkness trying to, lure me in. And I just remember in these dream experiences, I'm with the light. I didn't probably say the light at the time, but I said, I'm with Jesus Christ, or whatever words I would say, particularly as a kid, just saying, no, I'm not, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to the dark. I'm not going with you. But that, I've spoken to other people. Sometimes they've had that because they know who souls have come in, souls that have committed to, walk the path of light. And most certainly, we had discussed earlier, there are those energies, those powers that be, those entities. That I call the service to self group. Okay, they're like, we're in charge and we don't want any, we want to keep humans, where they are, keep them in chaos because it benefits us. And we're not talking anything about any ascension, and we're at the top of the heap and we're going to keep it that way. And so that has always been the struggle. If you go all the way back to the beginning, where we hear of, the so-called fallen angels, whichever way you want to, describe that, but it's something that has made a separation of the wholeness and oneness of the light and unconditional love. And so it's been this back and forth in this world of duality ever since. So as these experiences started happening, of course, I would question it and try to figure it out. But then that kept me seeking as to what is going on. I don't want to live my life in fear. I want to know what's going on. And so finally, at some point in my life, I had a connection with my aunt, the one I told you about, that was a psychic. She gave me some insight into one family member that supported me in my experiences. Nobody else did. And that's why I kept my mouth shut. And then at some point, what happened is that I believe it was 1979. I was having all these experiences, you could say paranormal experiences, and I'm trying to figure out what it is and why it's happening. And then I had one significant thing in 1979, I think was the most psychic year for me. And I just, for the first time, had to put pen to paper and write these impressions that were coming in so strong. I couldn't ignore it. It was like a telepathic thought in my head, and it was saying, all these different religions, it's all one. It's all one. So at that time, it didn't use the words as, a unity consciousness and oneness. Those terms weren't used back in 1979, but that's what this impression was, that it is all one. We're connected to everything. And of course, I had my experience at 2.5. So I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So I ended up creating a symbol, which you will see at the Cosmic Center Spiritual Light. That is the symbol I got, which is the Greek letter phi. It's a circle and it has a line through it saying it's all where everything is one. That's the concept of the symbol for this information that was coming to me. And so at that time, I wrote it out. It's called the universal cause, which is like there's one cause for everything. That's the best way I could write it at the time, that many religions have aspects of the oneness of things, and not to say that one necessarily contradicts the other. It's all, as the Hindus say, there's 33 paths to God because it's all one. And then one vision I did have when I was asking, well, how come you get, one group will say one thing, another group will say another thing, or even a channel will say one thing and it looks like it's being contradicted by somebody else? What was shown to me was, if you could imagine a large lucite block, and in it is a red rose. You see the petals of the red rose. You see the stem. You see the green, flowers, and it's a long stem rose. Well, it is so gargantuan, as this was trying to be explained to me, that say you have somebody looking at this, from the northeast, and what they're going to see is like, no, it's rounded and it's red, and this is what a rose is. And then you have somebody say in the southwest of this, cosmic rose, and they're saying, no, it's tubular, it's green, and it's like straight. And so what it is, as I understood it, is that depending on our perspective, depending on where we are, both are right. the person who says it's red and it's rounded is that's a truth, and the person that said that it's green and it's tubular, that's the truth of the same thing. So again, the concept of oneness, it's all one. So that's why we can't judge. We can discern, but most certainly discernment is so important, because you have to be aware what's in alignment with the light, and what's not. Okay, but the judgment, on this other level is that people may have different perspectives because there's a different truth for it. And so that's okay. That's where civility comes in. That's where the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood come in. And we can agree to disagree, because on higher levels, it is the same thing.
Yes. I read a book, The Law of One, and they described it just like that it only using a car, depending on where you were standing, how you would see the car. And it depends on your perspective.
Correct.
Yeah.
And speaking of the law of one, I've read, if you could say, a summary of the law of one, because it's such a profound teaching. But I have concepts of the law of one, with Ra,
Mhm.
and actually, I do have an anchoring light meditation that has been taking place every single Monday for over 13 years. We're going into our 14th year. So this is in line with what you asked me. So I became aware at some point that there's a higher level of communication and understanding that transcends the five senses of the physical body. And I started to have more trust in that. And along that path, and that was particularly after 1979. And of course, it took a lot of courage for me to say, I'm writing this, and I got it published. I went to an attorney, because at the time you didn't have the internet as we know it now. And so I had to get a copyright. I had to actually mail that out to 50 people. So from way back then, they were like, oh, this lady, we don't know about this young girl. But anyway, I did what I had to do. This is important for people to know this, because it was that strong. And I just had to do it. I had to do it. So I got it copyrighted. I actually have a symbol that I had made in gold of the symbol, the idea that I would never forget that it's all one. And what ended up happening is that this symbol, okay, and the concept of it's all one, of oneness and unity consciousness, 33 years later, manifested itself as the cosmic center of spiritual light. So what came to me in 79, I got copyrighted in 1980, is the symbol of the cosmic center of spiritual light, where the physical location is in Sarasota, Florida. 33 years later. And in between that time, I was on my own spiritual growth, as we all are. And what I would say to our audience is that, if you sense something, intuitively, or, you feel something, trust that, because as the more you trust it, the more it becomes developed. So at some point now, the next major thing that happened was about the anchoring light. I'm now reading books. And one of the things I want to bring in that was very empowering for me, I started to become a student of theosophy for getting my minister's license. And I remember I always felt that I should have a church. That's what I understood to be a church, but really it's a spiritual center. But and that was a whole journey for myself. I'm thinking, like a traditional church, and it wasn't happening. But and even like the mediumship churches, I had investigated that and was there for a while, but I had a whole experience, and I said, no, there's more for me on my path. There's more, and I didn't know Okay, I didn't know until during this journey, it got to the point to say there's a whole higher galactic level of consciousness, not just the mediumship and the astral plane, but way, way beyond that. And so that was another great awakening and say, oh, this is like, you know, it took 33 years. This is what you operate from. Okay, on this level of frequency you operate from. So, we all have our parts. So you have to find, where do you fit in as the tribe of light? Where's your position? Because nobody can do your position like you. That's one of the beautiful things. We are all unique, we're all one, but we all have our special tone, our special geometry that no one else can take that place but us, which is why it's so important to follow your divine inner guidance and be in your authenticity, so you show up in that point, in that area that only you can do. Because when we do that, then you have this divine, collective. And then in this journey, I got very clearly, I became aware that there are Palladians and Arcturians and Syrians. And most certainly at some point in that journey, it was like, hey, we're not the only ones as far as extraterrestrials are concerned, as far as, it being teeming in life in the cosmos. And I remember when that, you knew it, but then it's like, no, this is really real. And it could be anything. I think I was reading Sylvia Brown. And, I've been on the path, but then some perspective that she said brought that into my conscious reality. Like, whoa, there are other beings on many planets. And of course, that changes everything. That's a whole shift. And of course, you have to integrate it and so forth and so on. Another major thing that happened, another major thing is that I had a dream experience, and I just don't call it a dream because it's beyond a dream. It's a dream experience. And in this dream experience, I was giving the book of Earth. And it was, it was like in a Colosseum, like how you see the Roman Colosseum. And I find myself like at the top of it. And I'm like, what's going on? And everybody is like looking at me. There was like thousands of people there, everybody's staring at me. And I'm looking down at, the round amphitheater down there. And I walk down there, and this being, this huge being, I really could not see the face. They're so big, I could only see like the shoulder, but I think it was Thoth, the Egyptian Thoth, the scribe. It makes sense it would be the scribe. And there were a lot of other dignitaries around there. I was handed this book. And when I opened up the book, it wasn't like in hieroglyphics, it wasn't in a language, it was in colors. So how you would see like a watercolor, like your pinks and your blues, and how it, kind of blends in. As I turned the page, it communicated to me emotionally. And what the communication was telling me about the earth and what was really going on. And I was in shock. I was like, what? Oh my gosh, what? And I just remember just being like, whatever rose-colored glasses I had on came knocked off as these revelations that were coming to me through this process, through my emotions of understanding what was going on earth. And then I closed the book and I held it to me and I said, I know I can only do good with this information. And after that experience, my life again shifted in a dramatic way, where all of a sudden, I'm like really, I had a dream about President Eisenhower. I was just a little kid when President Eisenhower was president, but that sparked me to do research on President Eisenhower and, some of the videos that were out there. And then that led me to like a video that I saw about black helicopters that led me to where he said, be careful of the, industrial complex. And I'm just like waking up to this whole other side. So I could say where the first part of it was like in the first grade with my teacher of love, 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 and nurturing and caring. And then the second grade was the complete opposite of that. Well, I was in my second grade experience of learning what was really going on the planet. So now that brings me to a whole level of awareness, a whole where what do I do? So during that time is when, um, just prior to that, I just want to say that I also was aware of the suppression of the divine feminine, like right from the beginning. And I've had experiences with the Divine Mother, who I call Mother Mary, and she that I discussed with you, Jane. But one of the things I wanted to mention, about that is I saw right away that there is a great imbalance where women were concerned, absolutely concerned. So I always said, well, I got to do something about that. So an opportunity came up when I was part of an organization. It was very patriarchal. And I said I want to do peace meditation. I'd like to talk about, I always would say Father, Mother, God. They were telling me, well, they wanted to, I had some skills. So, they wanted me to sort of be, part of their organization, the platform, and give messages and things like that, which I could do. But I was interested in, you know, moving forward in a equitable way. And I would always say, of course, Father, Mother, God. And they had said, no, you can't say Father, Mother, God. I said, well, you can't ask me to do anything because I will always say Father, Mother, God. So, and I stood my ground, and they accepted it, and I became empowered. And then I said, we need to do about the goddess. We need to do about the high priestess. We need to do about the divine feminine. We need to get a group together. So again, that was denied. No, no, no. But then that's when Dan Brown's book came out. Uh, I can't think of it right now, but Dan Brown's book, and it was all about the divine feminine and what was really going on. And then they approached me because they wanted to do some classes and said, well, that Father, Mother, God thing you want to do, you can do it. And that door opened up, and we had an eclectic group of women come together from all faiths. It was just really amazing to discuss about, the Divine Mother and the suppression of this and the divine feminine. And that was an amazing thing. I ended up getting a book that literally fell to my feet by it was not We the Arcturians, it was the Palladians, Earth the Living Library, Earth the Living Library. And I didn't know anything about Palladians. I didn't even know how to pronounce it, but I saw the cover of it. I opened it up, and the page I opened it up to, I just picked it up and flipped it open, and it said galvanization of the mother, galvanization of the mother. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what it's about. I had no idea about the book. It was life-changing. And then I had some real definite experiences with that. And so again, as I want to tell your audience, as you knock on the door will definitely open. Also, too, I want to say, this path, as Jesus Christ said, the path is narrow because it requires you, if you, this sense of following your soul pulse, the sense of loving God with all your heart, with all your might. It's this higher part of yourself that's pulling you forward as you follow that. And there will be a lot of distractions, a lot of blockages, a lot of interference, what I call interference. I had talked about that on Monday at the Anchoring Light, that we want to hold that loving determination to be successful, to be victorious in our path of light. And as you do, it's not as easy. That's why Jesus Christ said, the path is narrow, but the blessings are profound. And what is it like to live, fearlessly, without fear? When you have a higher level of consciousness and awareness, is saying this is just a little dot in comparison to what eternity in the myriad of worlds that there are. It just gives you a completely different perspective, and you begin to live your life with ease and grace. So it most certainly is worth the journey. And then finally is having the patience. One other experience I did have, there's been numerous, but I would say the most recent is, again, another, they have Jacob's ladder, like this one rung, then the next, then the next, then the next. And it's almost as if you're climbing up to reach, you will have the ascendant realms coming to meet you. And there's a place that you intersect. There is. And that's where this interdimensional communication takes place. And so I also had this sensing that there was a change coming. I didn't know who it was or what it was, but I just felt it was something powerful wanting to come into my life. And so again, we live by choice. I didn't resist it. I said, okay, thy will be done. Speaking of the El Elyon, the King of Kings, the God of Gods, the Supreme One. And it through divine synchronicities, which I encourage everybody, you never ignore anything. The divine synchronicity, just say, make a note of it. A sense or a feeling that you have, make a note of it. Because the more you do, the more it becomes more anchored into your field. Because don't forget, these are subtle energies, but the more you use it, it's like a spiritual muscle. You want to keep on doing it. And the other thing I want to say in that real good, you're going to have the counterforce, the resistance, all of that. Oh, who do you think you are? You think you could do that? You think you're something? What I used to physically do is go, shh. I would just shut it up. I physically did that these other thoughts that were coming to try to take me away from what I'm trying to follow, I would shush it up. That's what I would do. I would go, shh. And so anybody could do whatever tool they want to do, but that's what I did. So I could kind of stay on this path. So I had a whole experience with Metatron. Now you have not understand. I never heard of Metatron. I only, knew the four archangels that we usually do, like Michael and Uriel and Raphael and Gabriel. But come to find out, Metatron was actually mentioned, and somebody told me, in the Catholic Mass somewhere. So I was surprised. But anyway, so how Metatron came into my life, and I do want to share this, is I was taking a particular class. I had like this healing, instantaneous healing. It was a gentleman that came, and we can't judge, okay, because he was more like the Pentecostal, where we're more meditative, but it's all one. It's all one. So I invited him to come to the Cosmic Center. His style was a little bit different than what we were used to, but I tell you what, there were healings that took place. Absolutely. And, we brought in the Holy Spirit and all of that. So I wanted to take some courses, and we're friends to this day, actually. And we were doing that. And in this process, I pulled this card, this whole thing with Metatron started coming up. Metatron. So when I'm leaving now, it was in the daytime, maybe about 3:00 in the afternoon, the sun was out, I'm heading home. These two flashes of light, like lightning, I see. And so much so that I kind of slow down the car. Actually, I stop it, I believe. And I'm looking around as to where these flashes came from. And, there are any mirrors, is it, I just looked at the entire environment, like, where could these just two flashes just come out of nowhere? I couldn't find anything. So anyway, by the time I got home, I went on my computer and I just wanted to Google, and I put flashes of light, and Metatron comes up. There was a website that brought up Metatron. And I read what it says. It says Metatron's presence comes as a flashes of light. And I went, oh my gosh. So then after that, I realized that I had this connection with Metatron. And then my thoughts started changing for more positive. And I just remember like the thought of, when people would say, well, how are you? And I would say, oh, I'm hanging in there. And the thought came in, do you really want to just hang in there? And so I replaced that when people say, how are you? I'm known for saying, I am blessed beyond measure. I am blessed beyond measure. And so that was a gift from Metatron. And guess what? I am blessed beyond measure. And the other change in vocabulary was when people would say, well, when is this going to happen? And how is that going to happen? And I would say, at the divinely appointed time. And that was, I can't even begin to tell you how that released a lot of stress. So, this again is a higher divine guidance that comes in that helps you, with your life and how you proceed with your life for the better. And then the other thing that happened that I realized, which is why we have the Open Heart Divine Healing Service today at the Cosmic Center, is I wasn't sure what the Holy Spirit was. I read about it, but I didn't know what it was. But I do know now that Holy Spirit presence with those 7 gifts is absolutely real. And there's actually a connection, which I have found in my study of the books of Enoch. That's with J.J. Hurtak, that's the Academy of Future Science, a relationship between Metatron and the Holy Spirit. So when you start on this path, which I just tell everybody, just have the courage, follow your intuition, even if your mind is saying, oh, you're crazy, or that can't be, or whatever. Do what you need to do to kind of shut that down. Try to focus on and build up these subtle communications that comes to everyone and develop it. Everyone has this opportunity. It's just developing it. There are those people, okay, that maybe have the same potential, but chose not to develop it. Squash it down. Well, nothing's going to happen as much. It's like a muscle. Okay, you go to the gym, you work out a muscle, it's going to develop, it's going to do that. If you don't, it's not. Same thing with your spiritual muscle. So everybody has this ability, on various levels in different ways. Everybody does have it. So that has brought us to a number of things that we offer, the anchoring light meditation, the open heart, divine healing service, what we do now in terms of inspiring people. I do a particular course called What's Really Going On Planet Earth. And we do have that available on Vimeo, where I do talk about now the Gnostic Gospels. That was a new level of the path of light that we're all on. Knowledge about the Gnostic Gospels, a lot of information was left out. Not only left out, it was manipulated also. I've come to appreciate what scriptures are, but in part, they're not the whole thing. So you have the Apocrypha, you have the Gnostic Gospels, you have these other pieces that man, made a decision to keep out. They said, you keep this in, you keep the other ones out. Well, I would say to everybody, you want to be no limitations, always discerning, but you should seek, wherever there is knowledge. And then you take the golden nuggets from it, and what doesn't resonate, you leave the rest. But it was in this journey that I became to understand, particularly with the Pistis Sophia. And the Pistis Sophia does talk of the ancient times and the split with the divine and how we find ourselves in the world we are today, which makes absolute sense. And so once you are aware, you know how to proceed and what to do.
Right. So it's super important right now to do what you're saying, if at all possible, to, live your tone, walk the narrow path toward something greater. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And just describe what you see as ascension. And, I know there's a big, in your heart, a need to live in more of a doing for others instead of doing for self, because that is contributing to the whole.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of that, Jane, yeah, I see it in two groups. It's the service to self or service to others. We're here for service to others. That is the path of light. In many traditions, they say that, we're one another's brothers and sisters. We are one humanity. And the challenge is, do we walk on a spiritual path? um, where you come from the path of service to others in the open heart of compassion and unconditional love, or do you give way to more of the animal passions, of lust and greed and power and so forth? So this has been, the back and forth of the polarities. We are in a world of polarity, and so it does depend on our choices. We have choice. And so our choices is going to dictate how things will unfold. And this is very important for us to be aware of. We are co-creators, because I want to impress to the audience here that we hold the similitude, we hold the image of the divine. And in fact, our creation has not been created in this physical level. It was on a much higher level. Okay, we didn't even have physical bodies. Our physical bodies came about density and the so-called fall, or the lower vibration. So we hold this divine similitude and image, what in Kabbalah they would call the Adman Kadmon, okay, the divine human. Okay, that was, Adam, that was Eve, the divine human. And then there's many different creational stories, but it is a similar theme. The similar theme is that something skewed off, something happened to make this vibration that was very high fall. So the Pistis Sophia, I recommend. It's really the story where the risen Jesus. So the Pistis Sophia is like not the Jesus that was on the cross, but this is after he came back and stayed for a while and spoke to the apostles and to his disciples, included, Mary and Solomon and Martha. I mean, it's a whole different thing. And he's saying, okay, let me explain to you the whole story. He says, I couldn't tell you everything before, but now I can. I'm here in my light body. And he talks about time travel. He talks about the myriad of worlds. He talks about, the different aeons. And he talks, about the Pistis Sophia, which is like the higher aeon of what you could say is that we're connected to Sophia, which was wisdom. And in her wanting to get more light, and there's a whole story, she fell, and then these archons, what they call the archons, or the service to self, these are on the higher levels, okay, start to manipulate her, which her story is the story of our story on the earth. And so what happens now, because of this fall in vibration, the fall of the filament, or which there's many ways of describing it, our goal of the path of light, okay, of that divine Maitreya, of that Christ consciousness, when they talk about, the gods returning, it has to do with this fall that happened on way higher levels than us, of which we are connected to. So how do we do our part? Well, a lot of it we can't do completely on our own, which is why we have the Amishadai, our family of light, in the higher realms of light. That's why you have avatars of light that have come to the planet to assist. Okay, but we also are not just victims. Okay, we hold a similitude. What the issue is that we don't know this, but everybody else in the universe knows about it, and particularly those service to self, they know about it. Because if we were to wake up, then they no longer have a place. They no longer have the power. They lose all of that. So it is their goal to keep us in ignorance, to keep us in chaos, to keep us in war, to keep us with the illusion that somehow we are separate from one another. And so I will say that there is a lot of manipulation, a lot of deception and deceit upon humanity, coming with this service to self group that is multidimensional. Okay. Then you have the awakening humanity, okay, that has that group that is empowering, nurturing, loving, and saying, here's some guidelines for you to raise the energy for yourself as well as the planet. Because we just don't want to say, okay, ascend and leave everybody up. Everybody, we want to bring that up. Now, I will say this. I want to say something in terms of experiences. So at that time, when I was given the in 1979 and, it's all one, and I had that symbol, I also saw very clearly on top of a mountain, it was on top of a mountain, a group of people together, like a group of humans together. And in my mind, I saw them like being like the presidents of countries or, high dignitaries of various countries and governance coming together on top of a mountain and praying to raise the vibration of the planet, to raise the vibration up. And that was very vivid. Well, turns out on my journey, I ended up going to Peru. And this was very interesting. Just as a side note, that when this happened, I started the anchoring light. I was doing the anchoring light every Monday, working, doing that, but committed to doing the anchoring light. And lots of people came. I wasn't even sure, like, will people come back? I kept on doing it because people started coming back, and that's why a lot of us are going to doubt ourselves in doing something. But as you do it, as you get past that self-esteem issues, what am I doing, and questioning yourself, you will find that you'll begin to build momentum. So anyway, the anchoring light now is going on, I think, just for about a year. And I get clearly the idea to go to Peru, that there and the name was Tititata, Tutu, something like that. And I'm like, what's Titicaca? Somebody said that's Lake Titicaca. And I didn't know about Lake Titicaca. I guess I must have missed school that day when they were talking about Lake Titicaca, which is in South America. It's on the border of Peru and Bolivia, and the highest lake on the planet. So anyway, turns out, what's this? Some research, and that's where some of the ascended masters, on the inner planes that reside in that area of Lake Titicaca, as well as the Mount Shasta, and many different places. There's spiritual areas on the planet. And so this was, again, like, wow, how do you even go? I don't speak Spanish. Anyway, I said, okay, I will. And when you surrender, it's surrendering to this higher, level of consciousness, of awareness, a divine directive. That's what I call it, a divine directive. And I just say, okay, everything fell into place. There was a young lady here, blonde hair, blue eye, Sheena. Okay. And she says to me, I lived in Peru for years and I speak fluent Spanish. I had no idea. And she says, I've always wanted to take a group to Peru. And that's how things started. And just a small number of people, to do this very special sacred journey. The divine synchronicities were just amazing. We're at this Amaru Muru, which is like a door that has been carved into a mountain. It's very famous, and it looks like an interdimensional doorway. If you Google it, you'll see it. But anyhow, that's where we were. And then another group from Lima, okay, which is capital Peru, they were there with their shaman. And so these two groups came together, and we were all going to do a meditation there. And the only lady that spoke English from this group from Lima, because we kind of combined our energies together, I told her, I said, we're going to go to Amaru. No, not Amaru, but it's Anapia. It's an island in Lake Titicaca to do a special ritual and prayer there. And I told her, you should come with us. And just like how the Celestine Prophecy book was about, how these divine synchronicities and these things come up, is exactly what happened. And
Mm.
so she spoke to the group, and they all agreed to come. And so here we are on these boats going to this little tiny island called Anapia. They don't have a hotel or anything. We ended up being the guest of the people who live there. They live off the land. It's the only area that they have golden trout. And when we stayed with our guest, beautiful person, she would just take out the food from the land and tell us what she was going to cook and make for us. In the meanwhile, we prepare to go to this mountain that is in one of the areas there. We climb up, and before that, let me just mention the people of Anapia, they have like a community house. And so we were all invited, and all the people from the area were invited to go to greet us. And so we're sitting there, and the guy, the main guy from this island, we had an interpreter. He said, "Why are you here?" And everybody that was there, including the group from Lima, our group, and from their group, of which we had representation of all people from around the world, because I had a diverse group of people. The Lima group had a diverse group of people, plus the ancient Amara people. We all said that we are here for Pachamama, Pachamama, for our Earth Mother. And when we were on top of this mountain, I, said a prayer, and we did a ceremony, and, channeled, and I worked with the shaman that was there. We did it together. And I looked around, and I looked at all these different faces, and I said, wow, this looks familiar. And it took me back to the vision I had those many, 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 many years ago of seeing these leaders on top of a mountain praying to raise the frequency of our earth. And I realized then and there, the impression came to me. They said, no, it's not a president. It's not an ambassador. It's not any dignitary from a government. It's you. You are the ones that we are waiting for. We are the ones that we are waiting for. It was every person on top of that mountain. It was humanity. We are the leaders, not the governments. We are. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So always you have an inkling to this. You feel you're to do something. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. That is so important for us to know that. That really is. And that we are powerful, powerful co-creators. We are. And our choices, particularly now, Jane, I feel in the next 3 years, and most certainly in this decade, are going to be huge. If there was ever a time to walk the path of righteousness, this is the time to do it. I do believe that we are in what I call the days of Noah. The ascension is getting back, or perhaps maybe in a new way, of the higher vibration that we once were, that we can get to that Atman Kadman, to that divine human, to the higher frequencies of light, to go beyond the worlds of duality, to come back into the world of Shambhala, where there is peace, where there is wholeness, where there is unity and endless creativity, where we fall and move into our positions as great Elohims, for we are co-creators, and we are told co-creators of worlds. That this experience that we're going through now is literally a template for more worlds to be created. And so we now awakened humanity, remembering who we truly are as these magnificent spiritual beings of light, are here to raise the planet and all of her life into the higher frequencies of light and take our positions in this level, and to transcend the duality creational process. That's ascension. It's back from whence we came, which is what we all long for.
Yeah. And I just love your message that it's time for all of us to step up and follow our intuition and be where we should be at the right time and do what matters,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I want to say that we hold that much power. See,
Mm-hmm.
this is the let me say just there's a couple things. How do we begin to do this? I'm going to just take some of the uh, information that we share at the Open Heart Divine Healing Service when people are looking for healing. And that's our personal journey. We have to heal ourselves. Okay. We have to heal ourselves individually and collectively, meaning we always have to improve ourselves. We always have to seek, we all have to understand, we have to do those things that brings us back into wholeness. So there's 3 tenets of the Open Heart Divine Healing Services that we do, which is the first Sunday of every month. And one is we have to forgive. We have to forgive everything and everybody, just a blanket forgiveness. And I've heard people say, I can't forgive. That's fine. Call for divine intervention. You have to understand that we are not alone. We are part of the family of light, the Amish Shaddai. Okay, that is, you have avatars of light, and of course, you come to the realization we're not limited to this physical body. We're way more transcendent to that. Okay, you can call for divine intervention. You have to remember to ask. You have to remember to ask. There's a divine directive that says that there's no interference, at least from the light. There are those that do break that directive, but it is very, very good to be in a habit of calling for divine intervention. The angels, the ascended masters, your ancestors, whoever it is that you resonate with, okay, the saints, call for divine intervention that helps, and they can help you on your path of forgiveness, because forgiveness is not for the other person, it's really for you. And with that, you forgive yourself, you also forgive that other person benefits by that. So that's number one. And then number two, this is a real biggie, is to know that we are worthy of forgiveness, of love, of wholeness. We're worthy of it. There's so many people that think, oh, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not worthy of healing. And when it gets to the worst circumstances of that, I can't even tell you how it pulls on my heart that people commit suicide because they think that this is it, this is the end of it. No, it's not. You are worthy, because there is forgiveness, number one. When you understand everything, you forgive everything, because it's not easy. There are these negative influences that are there that are competing with who we are as these magnificent beings of light. And it's just that we don't know it. And sometimes these service to self energies can just bring you down to the point that you think that this is the reality, and it is not. We are in this world of Maya. And just telling you real quickly an experience I had with the Divine Mother, as I asked, well, what's this world of Maya? What is this illusion? Because I said, if I put my finger on a fire, it hurts. That's nothing illusional about that. And what she showed me was like being in a vat of molasses. And if you can imagine that, that you don't know which way is up, which way is down, right or left, that's how thick the illusion is for many, many, many people, for the masses of people. It's that thick. And so the fact that you could even move in a direction, towards the light, okay, you pat yourself on the back, because it is a very world of great a delusion that can make you think that somehow you're not worthy. And then the third dynamic for healing is you have to be at the minimum open for healing. If somebody says, prove it to me, then that's not going to work. You have to be open to healing, but it'll come to a point where you say, I believe I can be healed. And then it comes to a point where you say, I know I can be healed. And if you begin to pierce through what I call electromagnetic field of the earth density, that you can move beyond that and tap into the higher parts of yourself, your higher self, your over self, and that part of yourself that's connected, with the myriads of radiant beings and of creation, then you hold much power. Your smile, if you smile at somebody, will be so more impactful, you have no idea, because you're beginning now to hold this frequency on a regular basis. You're holding this frequency of higher light. And the more that you are able to hold this light quotient within your being and being on the earth, the more you can impact the earth in a powerful way. So your own personal journey, of healing yourself, of staying on your path, of moving forward, it literally ripples throughout the cosmos, ripples throughout the cosmos. So yes, it's and is it worth doing? Oh my goodness, yes. Even as we are in this physical world, is your path of mastery. You could be in the midst of chaos and be in your center. You can be exposed and see things where, for example, what I do when I see, some of these terrible images, what's going on in the world, like in Syria and so many other places, and just the level of cruelty of what humans do to other humans. And of course, that sinks anybody's heart. It could bring anybody's energy down. But remember who you are, that instead of just looking at it, feeling helpless about it, I actually use my power of visualization, which is a divine power. That's how we create. I use my power of divine visualization, of imprinting on there. Okay, green grass, happy children, happy people. I'm putting another stamp or another timeline on that. And I want to speak about timelines really quick, real fast. So I think I had shared with you from many, many years ago, became aware. I didn't even really have, as I said, people around me, my didn't have that much support from the group, and most of us don't. It's a lonely path in the beginning until you find your tribe. And years back it was way like you're the only one, but now it's getting a little bit better. The tribe of light is coming together around the planet. We're all kind of finding each other using the tools of Aquarius, which is the internet and so forth. So as we are now, walking together, amassing our light together, instead of just being a little pinpoint of light, we're having like a huge, huge pillar of light now, because there is momentum going. So what's happening? The ascension is going to happen. How we experience it is our choice. And years back, I was shown, when I was, just starting like this awakening, that there was a show called The Price is Right, and it had door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, and showing that, like say, door number 1 was the easier path. If the collective unconscious of humanity was raising its frequency towards love and, humanitarianism and that sort of thing, then we could have a fairly, somewhat easy way into the ascension. Okay. There's going to be adjustments, of course, and calibrations on the planet, but not as drastic as, say, door number 3, which is where, just into the lower vibration, and just having hearts of stone and falling into the whole thing of power and greed and so forth. And then of course you have that middle one, which is a combination of the both. I am rooting for the middle one, that it doesn't have to be so bumpy. We affect the weather. We do everything. Our emotional body is so powerful, and our thoughts are so powerful. So I want to just empower everybody, that I know out there you could say, wow, it's helpless. No, we are that powerful. And I'm going to share something that we're going to do on Sunday, this coming Sunday, and it has been done in the past. But this is not new. It's We're going to come together as the family of light, and we're going to say these very powerful sounds. I want to talk a little bit about sound. Okay. Even in the Genesis, it says, and then there was the word. Sound creates. Sound creates. It's a vibration, and sound has a color, it has a geometry. And so you could say we are individual tones, we are individual colors, we're individual geometries. But sound is a very powerful tool of creation. And so this is what Moses used to part the Red Sea. This is what Elijah, Jesus, and other great avatars of light, they knew about the language of light, the sacred language, and these tones. And there are 5 sacred languages on the planet. There's Hebrew, Sanskrit, Egyptian, Chinese, and Tibetan. Those are the 5 sacred languages, meaning these languages were not originated from the earth, but from the higher worlds, from the upper worlds, and came to earth. So for us in the Western world, and what we do in our Open Heart Divine Healing Service, and we do many things that we do now use the names of God, as in Exodus, is the various 72 names of God, as well as other names of the aspects of the divine. That's what mantras are all about. When you go to India, you go to the East, and they pray mantras. These are powerful sounds that are in alignment with the light of creation and the aspects of the divine of God. So we are going to be using these names of God, being that we are consciously aware of who we are. And that's a big deal. It's one thing doing things unconsciously, is a whole different level when you do things consciously. Come together. We'll be dressed in white. It'll be very ceremonial, and we are going to chant the names of God with the intention to dismantle these thought forms that are building up, negative thought forms within the gravitational pull of the earth, of a civil war, continuing still for the United States, and also a world war, wanting to build momentum. Light workers have been holding this off for centuries. So I want to just give you a story real quick. In England in World War II, Dion Fortune, and there was a gentleman named Gerald, is the last name. Gerald is the one that kind of brought back the Celtic path, what they call Wicca, and using more magical ceremonial type of things of the Druids, what the Druids did. And Dion Fortune, was a light worker, and they had a spiritual community. So during World War II, the Nazis had intended to invade England, to invade Great Britain. They were going to get on the boats, cross the channel, and to invade England, as they did all the other European countries. They were going into France and Poland and Czechoslovakia and so on. So what they did, Dion Fortune and Gerald, I can't think of his first name right now, but they got their communities together, and they prayed to change that thought form of invasion that the Nazis had, that was really aligned on the upper worlds of a war god, that service to self group, and change it, bringing in light and holding the light. They brought in and had the imagery, for example, of King Arthur, and the chalice, and the Christ, and all of that. And the Nazis never invaded England. They bombed England, but they never invaded it, as was the intention, which could have shifted the entire war. So yes, behind the scenes, for those who work in the light, and you have to understand too, behind the scenes, there are those that don't, which is why light workers do have to show up. We do have to show up. And we are building momentum. And even as, dire as things may look at the time, we keep the faith and we move it forward because that's what our ancestors did. And no matter what, we are still evolving. We're at a critical point right now as to the direction. Can we take the planet as a whole thing and ascend? Does it have to split? Hopefully not, where, the light goes one way, the dark goes the other way. We want to bring everybody into the ascension process on the planet. So we show up.
Yes, I think it's a time for all hands on deck. Thank you so much. Honestly, I love that. And, I didn't really have to interject or ask anything. It's like I sent you psychic questions. You just
Yes,
answered them. It was just so beautiful. Thank you so much.
it
How do
is.
people find you? Or maybe they want to connect with you to do some of this work.
Absolutely, absolutely. First of all, we have a website, which is www.ccsl.com, which stands for Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light.com. And we also have a Facebook page. It's the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light Facebook page, as well as Twitter and Instagram. And we have such a great university, if you will, the Cosmic Center Spiritual Light YouTube channel. You can get a lot of information. You can have, I just want to share there are people who have had phenomenal experiences on the YouTube channel that they've been drawn to listen to a particular meditation or a lecture. And one lady actually moved from Oregon because she had an experience with one of the anchoring light meditations and came to Florida, sold her house in Oregon and came to Sarasota, Florida. So we've had a couple of instances like that. So I do encourage you to subscribe and like our YouTube channel. You could get a lot of information there. And if somebody wanted to communicate with me directly, please email me at cosmiccenterosl@gmail.com. cosmiccenterosl@gmail.com. I'm Reverend Sharon Elizabeth, and my spiritual name is Baba Sharon. We didn't get to talk about the Baba Sharon, but we'll do that another time, Jane.
I feel like we could do another episode. You have so much to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shane. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here and to be with your beautiful audience. Thank you so much.
And for everyone out there, don't forget, don't give away your power to anyone else. Be the creator of your own life. Spiral up, spiral out.